We'll start with you, Annemaree, because I know you the most, and then I can get to know you, Linda. You've worked with Mitchell Council.
Yeah, I was with Mitchell Shire for 5.5 years. Worked in environmental programs, worked with supporting local farming and local landholders in environmental work. Then ended up running the recovery centre at Wandong after Black Saturday. Did that for 3 or 4 months. I think I was doing like 3 different contracts for Mitchell Shire at the same time. So I was running their carbon management project.
I remember that.
And doing volunteer support for the Black Saturday fire recovery. So I've worn lots of hats at Mitchell Shire.
I remember when you did that CO2 thing, the conference. Back then, I think I was quite new to Facebook, and I tried to get a little get-together going, and it was school holidays. And everybody was like, oh, no, we can't go on school holidays. And I thought, well, it's the most perfect time, actually, because you can bring your kids. Yeah. And they can learn about
climate change and that sort of thing as well. Yeah.
I was going to say sacrificing our carbon emissions.
Yeah, well, mitigating them.
Yeah, controlling them. Yeah.
So Mitchell Shire did quite a bit of work in that space, but it's lost a bit of momentum.
Without you there?
Well, when Carbon Farming Initiative and the carbon pricing scheme lost a lot of momentum and, we lost the price on carbon, the funding and the work in that area just basically
it just fizzled out, didn't it?
Yeah. It became very hard for local governments and businesses to keep up with that. A lot of programs go that way. Funding's often 3-year cycles because that matches the election cycles, and it can be very difficult when you put a lot of work into getting a project up and running in a government framework with government funding. And if it's got 12 months of funding or 3 years of funding and then it stops, it's an awful lot of work that ends up amounting to not very much.
Linda, tell me about your career. Where was work today?
Work today was at City of Whittlesea.
Okay.
Or my local government planner. And I've had a very diverse working background, like many women of my age, and have only been a planner since formally 2008 when I started at Mitchell Shire Council, and that's where I met Annemaree. So I was there for about 2.5 years.
So you didn't have anything to do with that roundabout in Green Street?
I don't believe so. I couldn't swear to it.
So it's good to see women in planning because we seem to have a logistical way of getting around, don't we?
We do.
Now you're at Whittlesea doing planning. Tell me about Planet Rural.
Well, Planet Rural sort of came about because Linda and I worked together previously on environmental projects when we were at Mitchell Shire, most specifically a project called Environmental Best Management Practice that we worked on with Jeff McLean at Department of Primary Industries, and that was looking at supporting best environmental practice in farming. So we knew we had that common ground.
I think I'd also been looking for a business to have running on in the background because being self-employed is very much in my comfort zone because of past projects. So I kept finding ideas and then rejecting them. And part of my impetus was that I knew my family had lots of talents and my friends had lots of talents. And in fact, in the end, once we had the idea, Annemaree is probably the only person I know who has the ethical fibre and background to suit working with me.
You know it can be sustainable because you've sussed out her values.
Yeah. And we do. We match on that fundamental ethical level, and it's very important to our business. We are definitely working towards a broader community outcome. We're not here just purely as planning consultants or property design. We're here to foster a productive landscape, a rich local landscape that's offering food to the community at a local level that's going to really build the economy and see our rural landscape stay productive and increase in productivity. So we're just really looking to support local farming enterprise to become all that they can be and really become very profitable, productive, but with that strong ethical environmental base.
We also have a lot of insight into the regulatory barriers. I was a farmer and I became a planner or started working in the local government planning office only 8 months after walking off a farm for the last time, and still remember the outrage that I felt at the number of things that triggered a permit from the farming zone. And I think we've been able to look at some of the structural changes happening in farming through a regulatory lens and try and understand how to work around that.
And that's collective 20 years in local government or government frameworks for good or for ill. We always say now that we use our government experience for good rather than evil.
I hear you. You're not the person behind the desk saying that's just the way it is.
Well,
I don't make the
Sometimes
rules.
I am.
Yeah, and look,
Yeah.
and it can be difficult because sometimes regulatory frameworks are that you're telling people, right, well, this is the barrier that you're going to come up against. It may not work to do this way. We're going to have to use our imagination and think of another way. There's always more than one way to skin a cat. Actually, it was something that I saw in the recovery centre at Black Saturday. Normal people, in inverted commas, that had been through an extremely traumatic experience, that had never really had to deal with bureaucratic processes beyond the norm of the occasional planning permit or something like that. But when they're thrown up against bureaucracy in that way, and they want immediate outcomes because they're in an incredibly stressful situation and they need the assistance now, you could see the frustration when these two faces would meet. That was one of the starting points of the idea that there's got to be a more streamlined way through these frameworks.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I can take on the angst sometimes, because I feel a little bit responsible for the system, and I also feel a little bit responsible for sometimes the approach that people in government are taking.
No, you don't beat yourself up for that. You can't be responsible for that.
Well, I'm in the system.
Yeah, we are both working in the system, but hopefully with what we can do in Planet Rural.
Yeah, I don't imagine that the system that you're in would give you time at the end of the day to go home and say, how can our system be better? Because you're all busy and you've got work to do.
Yeah, true, but there's always room for improvement, and everyone should be looking towards continuous improvement and innovation in what they do, regardless. But yeah, government work can sort of, make it a little bit difficult to keep that motivation and momentum going.
But if you're inside the system, you can sometimes see changes.
Yeah, that's right.
In the way that changes might happen in the future, and it's better than being on the outside.
If we all walk away from difficult situations, then nothing gets changed. If we just go to the other extreme.
And become complacent, and that's the other thing that can be frustrating in government, because if people are in jobs for a long time and can become indoctrinated to the way that things are done and can't see that a new or clearer way, and that can lead to further bureaucratic issues.
Yes.
You got to appreciate it from the point of view of a compliance officer.
Yeah.
That they purely have a legislative framework to apply, and they don't have discretion. There's very little discretionary power involved. It's just applying the rules.
Well, they have to take it away, don't they? Because otherwise politicians get called corrupt, and you can say, I'll give you a permit to take wood off the side of the road, but I won't give you a permit.
They've got to be very clear and transparent rules, but sometimes in that process of developing those rules, it can become a fairly blunt instrument. Yeah.
The best way is just to say no, isn't it? The quicker you say no and quicker you get it into your person's head, the sooner you can move on to your next job.
Sometimes the change happens from the community. It's a bottom-up type of change. Well, actually, most of the time I think it happens from the community. So part of the recognition of, an idea for a business was recognising that people were changing their views on how they wanted to access their food.
Absolutely.
They were changing their views on how much they wanted to know about the people that grow their food.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about the Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance and the traction that they're getting now with the work that Tammy Jonas is doing in that space, but locally we've got Cynthia, James Mello at the Meat Room. We've got some great farming businesses, the Snaiths with Warrialda Beef. They've been doing that for 15 years and have a great model, and great people that are having a really red hot go and are exemplary examples to the rest of the community that are coming along for the ride as well. But you can see it in the success of the local farmers markets. Lansfield Farmers Market is substantial. And since Cynthia and Nick have taken over the Tullarook Farmers Market, it's starting to go great guns. So even a wet dreary day yesterday still had quite a few people through the doors. It was a great day. So as more of these things gain momentum, that's what fostering local food economy is all about.
That's right.
We want people to understand, particularly in the urban areas of Mitchell Shire, that things are changing. Farming industry isn't just about export, it's about the fact that we have a local population that's actually relatively wealthy.
Yeah.
And they can afford to spend more money on things that they perceive as being worthwhile, like organic food or free range or those various boutique type products.
What's the ideal paddock look like to you? What's the ideal paddock look like, Linda?
I've seen that. I've seen the ideal paddock. It didn't have any cattle in it. It was a picture book combination of grasses, and it was all perfect length and perfectly green. And I think the perfect paddock depends on the time of year.
Yeah.
So a perfect paddock in summer is pretty rare. Perfect paddock in winter doesn't have pugging. It's just got pretty good ground cover. It's probably that simple.
Yeah. What about yours, Annemaree?
Yeah, ground cover, productive, diversity. So diversity of species of grasses. Most paddocks these days will be sown down with, if there's half a dozen species in there, you're lucky.
Yeah.
Whereas the old timers used to aim for 80 different species in their paddocks. And that really fostered animal health. Shelter, your shelter belt, so that fosters biodiversity. And then you get the influx of wildlife, which is natural pest management and control. Mm-hmm. Really, there's just so much potential for the landscape to be improved. Again, we were talking earlier about Joel Salatin's ideal of stacking enterprises. Off that same bit of ground, you can pass the cattle through, and then you can pass the sheep through, and then you can mob graze behind them with chickens that will clean the pastures of parasites and further fertilise and aerate the pastures.
And scratch it and aerate it. Yeah.
So you're getting beef, lamb, eggs, potentially broilers. You have bees in the space. So how many products do you want to get out of this area? People have a narrow-minded view of the potential of their properties, and just because they own a small block doesn't mean that they can't do a hell of a lot with it. There's too many farms that just have a bunch of cattle grazing for a short period of the year, or that are just not productive spaces. They're set stocked, they don't have the diversity, they don't have the thought and effort put into it, and once it's set up and it's going, it works well. They're very, very productive systems, and they're regenerative. They're not only sustainable, they're regenerative, and that's the exciting bit. You can rebuild soil, you can sequester carbon. It's amazing what you can do.
And it gets you outside, and it gets you being fit and healthy.
And you're producing amazingly nutritious food.
Yeah.
That tastes awesome.
Yeah.
You cannot compare.
You cannot. No.
The beef off of this property to the stuff you buy in the supermarket. Like, I can't even eat beef when I go out anymore, or lamb. I don't even bother, because I know I'm going to be disappointed. It's really about reconnecting people and the land and with their food source, because this is what's sustaining them. And at the moment, we're taking it for granted.
And people can start off small. I know in my garden I've got the pallets that they use on the trucks to load slate and things like that, because I sort of time poor, but I can deal with a metre of sowing some spring onions before I'm bored with that patch and I quickly want to sow this patch. And it also keeps my feet clean and tidy when I'm in the garden.
Yeah.
So you can just start small, and once you get the bug, you just want to plant things wherever you go.
And people say that kids won't eat vegetables and that sort of thing. Well, watch how quick they'll eat a broccoli if they've grown it themselves, you know. Again, it's about reconnecting people with their food.
And it saves on packaging. If you're getting it straight out of the garden, straight onto the kitchen table, you haven't spent packaging, you haven't driven down the street, all that stuff.
It's so much more nutritious as well. Most of our modern crops are just pumped up with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium and sulphur.
Yeah.
It's just those NPKs, commercial fertilisers, and a lot of water.
Trucked a long way and then refrigerated.
Yeah.
I saw an apple on Facebook this morning, and they'd poured hot water over this apple, and all the wax came off like glue, and we eat that.
Yep. So I suppose that's the other thing that I did in my past, and I try not to talk about this because it disturbs people greatly as a rule. But when I was working at the Department of Primary Industries, I worked in biosecurity. I used to write the protocols for the chemicals that had to be sprayed on the food for interstate movement, for fruit fly protection and all this sort of stuff. And once you start realising the amount of chemical that's not only used in food production but in food transport and in biosecurity and pest management and quarantine, both state and national, you really start getting very wise about the food system and a little bit scared of some of the stuff that you're eating. The packaging has its own environmental impact and waste streams and all that. It's unnecessary. But the chemicals that you're putting into your body as a result of just blindly taking for granted that the food that you are offered is safe.
And that's what Cynthia was talking about a lot today, mindfulness of what you're eating.
Absolutely.
And my kids always want the convenience food, because that's what the other kids at school have got. So they've got the muesli bar wrapped up in the alfoil. if I say to them, you can have something from the supermarket, you know, as a bit of a treat, they'll always hit me up for roll-ups.
You can make awesome roll-ups. You need a dehydrator and puree the pear and just go.
Well, I said, you know what it is? It's the pears and apples that have gone rotten. They roll them up and
add sugar.
And then you get a roll-up. And that's not really what I don't like about it. The fact is that every single one of those has got packaging around it that you have to throw in the bin.
The sugar, like, you don't even need to put sugar. I don't even know whether they put sugar in it. They're so sweet anyway, but it's preservative.
But they just love me. I just snap around and go, no, not roll-ups. And then 9 times out of 10, nothing. No, nothing now.
Yeah.
But my little one, Alan, will have a passion fruit, and all I'll do is cut it in half. And it took off like mad. Half of the kids are, oh, such and such had 3 passion fruits today. I need 3 now. And it's great.
Well, at least it gets them eating their fruit, and that's important. Some of the great programs, like the Stephanie Alexander Kitchen Garden programs, that sort of stuff, where you connect the kids back to their food. And it's got to start right when the kids are young. And not only the school's responsibility, but the parents' responsibility. We have such a massive disconnect now with our food system. And when I was a kid, you always had a cousin or an uncle or someone that owned a farm, and you'd go out to the farm and you'd feed the calves or something like that, and you would have an understanding of where the food came from.
We had a look at the other rural planning consultancies that were around, and nobody else is really focusing quite as much on local food systems.
No, they're mostly facilitating subdivision and the degradation of the local food system rather than trying to support the local food system.
So let's make it really clear right now that we're not about putting more dwellings in the farming zone unless they have an agricultural enterprise that they are sincerely looking to promote.
It's exactly what your logo says, that it's planet rural.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like planet. Planet.
Correct.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just made the connection.
Yeah.
So what's that tagline down there?
We're for the dreamers.
Yeah, that's great. It's a multi-purpose kind of logo. It's for all ages. It's going to be a curiosity for young children. And have you had any feedback from young children about what it is?
Not so much yet. Look, we're still pretty early stages with the business, and because we're trying to balance everything, Linda's got a family, I've got the farm, and we both work full-time as well, and we're really looking to build this business up and then transition to the business full-time. We're just in the very early stages. How long have we been?
November we started.
Yeah, so it's not even been a year. It's very new, but at the same time, as we said, we've both been working in this space and have been passionate about this space for a long time. And we're both local. We're really passionate about the local area and want to see it be all it can be. And there's so many cool people doing way cool stuff in this area.
Yeah.
And it's about bringing them together and just being that point of support. We're pretty excited about what the Mitchell area has to offer. We're so close to the growth area, we're so close to Melbourne, we've got these ready markets right nearby with some beautiful productive landscapes that can produce amazing food and get it out to the community and really reconnect people back with their food source.
Fantastic. It is a very fertile area, isn't it? You have some beautiful sunny days where things grow, and it is a good spot.
Oh, we've got some great soils in the area.
Yes, I just was recalling that when I was working in Mitchell Shire and planning, the phrase that was often trotted out was, this is not prime agricultural land, usually as a reason to approve a subdivision. And I think we need to start to work out that prime agricultural land doesn't have one characteristic.
It depends what you want to use it for.
Correct.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
The right thing in the right place.
Yeah.
And City of Whittlesea, in my job as agribusiness officer, we have started a project with Deakin University looking at the land capability assessment. And it's exactly that, looking at what the assets of the region are and how can we map the crop potential and the economic potential of that space to maximise its profitability and productivity for the community. We really should be looking at doing something similar in Mitchell Shire so that we can protect these valuable farming assets that we have whilst accommodating this growth that's coming our way.
Yeah, it sounds like perfect timing.
Absolutely, we've got that advantage.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you started it, even though you're building it and you've still got your part-time jobs.
This is the bit that we like doing, so it takes priority.
Well, you've been doing the other stuff for a while now, so you're kind of, not to say that you would be, but you can be on automatic pilot with that sort of stuff.
No, not at council. No.
Not at council. And the agribusiness role that I'm doing, it's complementary to the work that I'm doing with Planet Rural. So I don't see it as a disadvantage because it constantly brings me into the farming community, into the broader farming community as well, and just keeps me informed about what's going on. And I think that's actually quite an advantage to the business.
So there you have it, folks. We're going to wrap this interview up.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yes. It's been great. And love your work. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about how people can contact you.
You can see us at the office occasionally, but the easiest way is to go to our website, which is planetrural.com.au.
Has it got the hyphen in it?
No.
Okay.
So it's PLANIT rural.com.au.
Yes.
Yep.
And the business is opposite the Royal Oak.
It is.
Would you say that's the best landmark?
Yeah, that's it. And being close to the local pub had nothing to do with it. And Plan Right are our great supporters in that building. Michelle and Michael have been great support for our business too.